What's up, Kodo?
Yo, what up, Blur? And you've lived through a lot of eras in Smash history. I'm wondering what your thoughts are. Where you think the old ones, the old heads, are kind of shafted a little this
I
list.
think I think I think they did that knowingly, and that's. I mean, look, here's the problem, is that like I think in 2023 I'm mostly okay with where this is going. I just don't think yet. Like I mostly believe that, like, for example, like literally within a year I'm gonna have Zayn in like five or six, like, or like really high up there. Like it's gonna be crazy.
Do you think that he would
Um,
already be 5 or 6 if COVID didn't happen? Because it feels like since COVID hit, like 2 years just didn't really count.
So I mean, that's also the problem. Is like basically how do you count COVID? Because like literally, pretty much most of Zayn's best results, except for Genesis and Shine, are COVID era stuff, right? Like he won LACS, he won Pound Online, he won Summit 10 Online, he won those 3 out of 4 SCL weeks. That was really impressive, right?
Like I think he did that for
And then,
two SCLs actually.
well, the second one, I think he won 2 out of 4, but nonetheless, he got second. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that was nuts. And so it's like, okay, obviously, it really depends on how you count that, and like how you count the online era for him in particular. But if you're just gonna say, okay, well, he's just insane, and he's just, overall, like, was the best in 20, like, I I'm of the belief that he would have been the best in 2020 if there was land. And it's
Yeah.
pretty obvious. Like, you don't really have to be a genius to realize that, like, it does translate. But like, of course, because it's online, we don't know really how much it'll translate to major results, mostly because of the international players, honestly, right?
Uh,
Because when it
it,
becomes a big bracket and it's not invitational, you start adding in a lot more players. And so I'm less about it counts less because of the online thing. I think I'm more about I'm it counts less because they're not large open brackets with international talent, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
and just like
and
this, there's just always like gonna be a stigma for online. Like I've heard it with top players all the time. Like online didn't count, and like I hate online. I think LAN only counts. It's just there's just that natural stigma that it's like yeah, it kind of counts for Zayn, but it's like it feels like it weighs like 2000, like pre 2010 results. That's how it feels like it's weighed to me.
yeah, I mean, I obviously, because there is multiple panelists, you know, it might seem weird, for example, for certain things to get valued so highly. Like basically you're going to see conflicting principles and conflicting thoughts um average out and become weird on a list like this, right? Because there's different panelists.
Yeah.
So for example, you might say, "Oh, they're screwing over the old school because you look like Rob Money," right? Rob Money sticks out like a sore thumb, right? You have you have him like
I
20
don't even know who
places.
that guy is.
Well, he was like barely made the list, right? And he was like a top 5 to 8 player, right? For an era, right? And he's like 20 spots below Swift Base, who with I love Tim Tilley. I'm only picking him because I love him. But he's usually like a guy who gets 33rd or, at best at most of the tournaments he ever entered, right? So it's like, okay, so the modern era is getting like a massive boost. If being like that level of player is that much worse than being, like someone who you might not even think is top 50 in most of the years they played, right?
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, you see some older players, I think, getting a bit of a boost, right? Like I thought Eggum was a little bit higher than maybe I would have put him, and there's a handful of others that I would say that about, and I think that's because, like I said, there's probably some panelists who really valued the old school, and there's some panelists who didn't, and sometimes it went one way and sometimes it went the other,
Right.
and that's just natural to happen, and I think that's fine. Um, I actually, what's funny is that in some cases, like I think with Isaiah, I really like have reevaluated Isaiah's legacy, and I was like, damn, I think we've actually been rating him too high.
It's
Um,
I feel like
like
storylines matter so much.
the totality of his results are actually not that insane, right?
Yeah.
Like if I compare an Isaiah to a Chuda, it's like actually a Chu's just like it's like a tier. You know, it's like
Like, do you
he's
think
just
Isaiah should be ranked above SFAT?
I think maybe not, right? Like
Yeah,
and
KDJ,
maybe not
SUJ,
even above KDJ. Like KJ's 2006 is actually insane when you break it down. Like in 2006, 2007 is still to this day one of the most active and
and,
competitive eras
and
in
and
gaming
for the
history.
viewers, what results did he have at 2006? Because I don't know.
The Long Island ones are is listed there, but it's like mostly just being top three in just an insanely competitive era and being in grand finals of the MLG finals is really what most of us remember, right? Now he lost to PC there,
Hmm.
but nonetheless, uh, like this guy went from someone no one knew to like, holy crap, this guy is arguable best in the world or
His
like
head to head was
top
like
three in the
very
world.
impressive.
Yeah. His head to head was really good, and he started like I mean, he's old beat Ken, man. That's like that was a big deal back then. So his prime was really good. It was very short. So like, there's criticisms of KDJ. It's I'm always sad when people talk about like how like golden era players like careers were short and then we knocked them. I think it's fair, but it's also unfair because the truth is I was around in '09 and there was every reason in the world to quit Melee.
Hmm.
Like Brawl just came out. The whole community was acting like we were not going to play Melee anymore, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we weren't running tournaments anymore. Like we legitimately were not, right? Like there was a revival of Melee for a reason because we just stopped doing that for a while, like locals included, right? So if you're a top player, like what are you supposed to think, right? Like the whole community moving to the next game, like that process hadn't happened before, right? Like nowadays we know new game comes out, we don't care,
Yeah.
right? Like that's like well known. Back then we didn't know that. And so for many players, they kind of expected like their final melee tournament to be the one right before Brawl's release, right? And so I know it's kind of whack because they could have just seen how the scene developed and like looked into it and then come back, right? They definitely all
Like
could have.
back then, it was not like thinkable that melee would be like full time for like a long time.
Right. It was actually the opposite. And at that point, many of them had already taken like a year off, right? Like
Yeah.
imagine like taking like a year off because they're like you were told to basically and there was like no tournaments,
Hmm.
right? Everyone's focused on the new game. Seeing tournaments are sort of cropping up, but by the way, the scene's still really small. Like we're talking about the smallest the scene what has been since like '03, right? Like
Yeah.
the '09 melee scene was and like the '09 '10 like the dark ages as people call them, they're the dark ages for a reason, right?
Yeah.
It's because all of our top players quit because we kind of told them to, right? And then they didn't come back because it didn't look like we were running tournaments. We were sort of kind of running one or two tournaments a year, right?
Right.
And like it didn't look like it was anything big until 2013, right? So it's different than like so like let's say Mango talks to and says, "Oh, you know, Armada should get knocked because he could just keep playing, right? Like there's nothing stopping from him keep playing in the air like he retired whatever." I like giving people forgiveness because I think you can retire whenever you want and we should just judge you on the years you actually played. But I think for the golden era players, it's like I give way even more forgiveness for quitting because I really look at it and be like you the making the life choice of continuing to play in 2009 is not the same as it is now, right?
Yeah.
It's just not the same. It's like we literally just stopped hosting tournaments. Like you didn't really have a choice in the matter, you know? Like it wasn't actually the same thing at all. Um anyway, so to talk about it, like I think the hard part is like I look at this year for example, right?
I mean, it kind of
And
sounds like
everyone says
you're bumping like those kind of eras of players. Like you would kind of bump up international players a little because like they literally did not have like much chances to prove themselves.
mm. Well, I also think that I mean I think they were fair that they just didn't rank some of them because it's really hard.
Yeah,
But I also think that like some things are really impressive to me that maybe other people
like
don't value as
context.
much. Like Amsa, for example, like
Yeah,
Amsa with an H,
yeah,
right? Where I'm like, he was best in Europe for like almost half a decade, right? Like That's really impressive. And when he came over, he showed it wasn't a fluke.
Yeah.
Like, it's very possible that if we had a true international competition back then, that he was best in the world, and we just don't know, right?
Yeah. So like
Because
you kind of just give them a little buffer.
yeah. So I mean, you got to say something. I think it's disrespectful not to put him on a list like this at all, especially since he actually does have international results. But the truth is that his international results came like after his prime, right?
Yeah.
It's like if we only had modern era Chu. Like, and we never had like the international results of like Prime Chew, which was like his old school Chew.
Yeah.
And that's probably less fair. But anyway, what I wanted to say was, like, let's say you look at this year, right?
Hmm.
And everyone says Mango Zane top two because they're using their eyes and they know that those two are the best players in terms of
Hmm.
skill, right?
Yep.
But realistically, like, what results do they have,
Just
right?
one.
Like,
Eventually, like two. Zane has two technically.
Zane has one regional and a second place
Yeah.
at Smash Summit. And Mango
Yeah.
has first place at Smash Summit and literally nothing else. Now, with Zane, at least there's the SCL weeks, so there's some online stuff.
Yeah, which
Um,
again is like has that stigma. It's like, is that really counted? Really?
sure. And I think there was like Four Loco, which is smaller online that he did well at, but
Yeah.
you get the point. Is that like I find it weird to basically be like, oh yeah, let's just like chalk up 2021 as a year on their legacy. When I'm like, I'm chalking that up as like one tournament on their legacy. like,
Yeah.
like I don't really think it was all that impressive. And I say that because knowing full well that in a normal year they would have won and they would have been top two,
Right.
right? Like I fully understand that. But I personally, when people keep saying, "Oh, the top two," I'm like, I don't even call them that right now, right? Like I'm like, yeah, I mean, yeah, we're really gonna like Mango on a stream literally said the words, "Oh man, I'm so bad right now. I haven't played in 5 months." I'm like, we're just gonna call him top two when he's literally saying on stream, on camera, "I haven't played in 5 months." 5 months?
He's
Like,
still incredibly good for playing for not playing for 5 months, but yeah, I get your point.
no crap. Like, like I'm not denying that he actually is maybe the best in the world, and he actually is top two. Like in terms of skill, in terms of whatever, right?
I,
But I also think Armada is probably somewhere in like top 10 minimum, maybe top 20. Who knows? Whatever. But I don't give him credit for that, right?
yeah.
Like, you, because the truth is, and this is what really matters, and I hope people like really use this going forward, and when they talk about things of like competition and melee is I love how tennis does it, which is like, hey, we don't really care how good you quote unquote really are. Like how what your skill is in like this theoretical universe doesn't really matter. What really matters is the culmination of your results.
Yeah,
Right? Like
points.
to me, the world I would love to be in is instead of this subjective world where we're just saying, yeah, but dude, he's actually top two because like look, use your eyes, right? Um, we actually instead shift to he has less like tennis does it. Oh, he has less points than this guy because he just has worse results, right? Like, and that's the bottom line. I don't care. Like, if that means that Wizzy gets ranked above, you know, someone that like a Zane or a Mango because he won main stage and that counts for as many points as winning, something else, then I don't care. I'm fine with that,
I remember
because
back
to me
then
it's
when
like.
I was a casual, like I would actually check
Mhm.
the Smashboard rankings every now and then to kind of get a gauge of like who's active and what's up.
Right, exactly. And so for those Smash Bros. Rings were kind of cool in that way,
Yeah.
but I basically I find that like general sentiment of it. Plus I think it's not very good for the scene, like the subjective sense
Yeah.
of like, hey, that person's good because I think it demotivates them.
Hmm.
Like I think if I was Mango and I haven't played for 5 straight months, like, and everyone's still calling me best in the world or
Hmm.
second best in the world,
Yeah, because
right?
like he has nothing to gain by attending Low Tide City, Riptide, Main Stage. Like, what
Sure.
does he have to gain there?
I think Mango's a competitor, so it's like obviously there's a lot of him that wants to, but nonetheless, I think like just human psychology, it's like, oh, okay, I have to get good again by like practicing and grinding for a month.
Hmm.
Or I can sit here and everyone calls me top two, regardless of what happens. Like, literally, like, it feels like opinions don't change regardless of what happens. And that's one of the worst parts. It's
Mm,
like Wizzy wins a large tournament,
yeah.
right? Everyone's still calling Cody third. And I would love Cody, right?
Hmm.
And he might be third in
Hmm.
terms of skill. I don't know. He had freaking nosebleeds. That's one of my fears. Because I have a DVA septum, so I get nosebleeds sometimes. I've literally had the nightmares about like having my nosebleed like during commentary while playing, like in stress, like in real life, like
God
just like
damn.
what if it happens while I'm in the middle of a I remember when I was a kid, I was doing like a standardized test and my nose just started fucking bleeding. And I was
Oh
like, dude,
shit,
this is a
dude.
time this is a time test. Like
Oh my god.
I don't have time for this right now, you know? And I had to like try to take care of it and like basically do the test with my fucking head facing up, like head towards the ceiling.
And
Anyway,
Cody did it anyways.
I did it anyways because I was just like, what am I gonna do? Just
Yeah.
fail the test? I'm not gonna do that. So yeah, like basically the point I'm trying to make is that like I just feel like people like say, hey, we shouldn't be too fair whether with results, but the truth is when there's such a low sample, which is the truth for this year
Yeah.
because of COVID, um, I'm more okay with it than most years, right?
Yeah.
And I also think that like, I mean, you have to remember like many other years in Melee, we're talking about like 40 lands that we like
Yeah.
genuinely use to evaluate. Some smaller than
Yeah.
others, like 40 to 50, right? Like, but like usually like a minimum of like 10 to 15 big tournaments, like big tournaments,
Hmm.
and then like 20 to 40 smaller tournaments that like are used to evaluate results.
Yeah.
Whereas this year it's like
Less than
five.
5.
It's like five. And of those five, the best players went to one of them,
Yeah.
right? Like and so it's weird for me to be like oh yeah, just chalk that as up another year of those guys being the best. I'm like I don't think you can really do that. and
Yeah. And it's
and I
like
don't think that
I remember
yeah.
reading a Reddit comment where like, we thought that Summit 11 what heralded like the return of land melee, and instead we kind of got one of the biggest melee gaps that we've had since 2009.
Yeah, the good news is, by the way, like it's literally getting solved as we speak, right?
Yes.
Like we literally have an insane next 3 months, right? Like we have SWT finals, we have Summit, we have Genesis, like in the next like couple months, like
Hmm.
we're
And
like
whatever that
this
circuit is.
and yeah, no one knows what's going on with that, but clearly it will be impactful in some way. Probably, maybe it will be impactful. Actually, I can't say it's clear. Who knows?
Who knows?
But the point is like, look, that it's a weird time to evaluate. It's a
Yeah.
weird era to look at. I feel bad because I say all this with saying that like
Like
if the let's
we want Zane to be rewarded. We want Mango to
yeah,
be
but
rewarded.
how crappy is it is if our projections are wrong? Most of us are just like, well, it won't really matter because I think Zane's gonna be like tippity top for like the next 5 years, like minimum, right? Like I literally think that guy's so good that unless he quits, like no, like he's gonna be god tier player
Yeah,
for as long as he's touching the controller. That's how
exactly.
I see it. But let's say that assumption is wrong,
Hmm.
right? And let's say our projections of well, he's just gonna win a bunch of majors next year and he'll be top 6 or 7 anyway, in terms of like an all time list. Um, let's say we're wrong. Let's say he come like 2022 comes around and he actually just starts losing, right? And that can happen. Other people are
Or
good,
maybe
you know.
his hands break.
His hands break, something like that happens. Then we're in a real spot, right? Where we're just like, like, was this guy the best during that era? And like that then we have like a
Yeah.
really hard time,
Then we're gonna
right?
like be critiquing it like we did, like we're doing right now with Armada.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, why hasn't he been able to hold up? Basically, would be the
Yeah.
question, right?
Yeah.
Um, I still think his legacy, even if he just literally stopped tomorrow, his legacy would still be impressive. Like,
Yeah. I agree.
it's not, it's,
But
it's not like he's,
it's just unfortunate that basically 2020 and 2021 barely counts. It's like it seems like it's weighed just as much as like it's weighed slightly more than like post Golden Age.
um, maybe, yeah. Like 09, 2010. I mean, the thing is like of what things, right? Like the in 09, 2010, like those years, like there was a super major, like every like in those years still sometimes, right? Like we'll do a pound four or something like that, right? Like in the more dead years, but we'll still count pound four as like insanely impressive, right? But the rest of the year I don't count as impressive, like the other tournaments, because usually that those years, those dead years, were like everyone practices for the one or two big ones,
Hmm.
and then the rest is just dead, right?
Yeah, kind of like 2021.
Kind of like 2021. Um, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Like it's weird because, like I said, I think in a year I really do expect it to not matter,
Yeah.
right? Like Zane's gonna keep entering stuff.